So welcome back to another video on the channel. In this video, I'm going to be detailing the exact step-by-step process that I took in order to get my very first ever e-commerce client for my social media marketing agency way back when I made the transition from local lead gen to the e-commerce niche. Now, just as a pre-frame as well, I do want to mention that at the point that I did sign on my very first ever e-commerce client, I had no idea what I was doing. I had no step-by-step process to follow. I had no money. So I was kind of desperate at that point to sign clients on board, which obviously, as you guys know, you should never be desperate to sign clients on. And I was just kind of starting out my journey really, because I was in the real estate niche, granted, so I had experience, but obviously the e-commerce niche, it's very different. You need to follow different processes, different, procedures. You need to do different things, implement different things. And so in that realm, I was very much a beginner. And so I didn't have any advantages, let's say. But with that being said, what I'm going to detail throughout this video enable me to still get an e-commerce client despite my lack of knowledge. So anyways, guys, before we jump into the video, make sure you go ahead, smash the like button, subscribe to the channel. It massively helps out with the YouTube algorithm. And with that being said, let's jump straight into the video. As I say, despite my lack of knowledge, I still kind of knew what a good client looks like. Okay, so I knew that, a dropshipping brand isn't my ideal client. I knew that. I knew that, brands with terrible content isn't an ideal client for me. And so I made sure that I steered clear of those types of brands and that I only spent my time on brands that actually looked healthy. They looked like they had some sort of foundation, and it looked like they were actually putting some effort into their, online game. And so I came across this one client, okay, and it was a women's supplement brand. And bear in mind, you guys probably would have heard me talk about this brand before because they're still with me to this day. Granted, their monthly retainer has increased since I signed them on board, and I'll get into what I signed them on board for at the end of the video. Just know that they're still with me as well, because I made sure that I picked the right client. I made sure that I picked the right business. And so I came across this brand, and the first thing that was just completely stood out to me, it was glaringly obvious to me, was that their content was on another level on their Instagram page, right? Their feed looked amazing. It was very aesthetically pleasing. You could tell that they put a lot of effort into it. And I knew that would have correlated to the type of creative that I would be able to use and leverage in the Facebook ads. And you guys know, moving forward with Facebook advertising, the most important aspect of successful advertising is the creative front, is the ad copy and the image or the video that the actual customer sees. And so when I seen the content on this Instagram page, I knew that it was a great brand to spend some time on and look a bit more deeper. So that's what I did. And so from here, I went and looked at how many followers they had, and I seen way back when they had around 15.8 thousand, something like that. And right now, if I actually pull up their I'm actually going to do this live. If I pull up their Instagram right now, bear in mind, we never ever run advertisements on Facebook for any of our clients that have the sole purpose of growing, the Instagram page, growing the follower amount on there. So we never run ads that are solely, dedicated to that. We only ever run conversion ads that optimize for purchase. If you're in the quantum agency program, you know why we do this, you know the importance of it. And quite frankly, if you run any other ad that optimizes for any other objective, it's just useless, absolutely useless. So as I say, when I signed them on board, originally they were on around 15,000 followers. And from that point, since I signed them on board to today, as I say, they're still with us, till today, I've never ever ran anything other than conversion purchase ad. And as a byproduct of sending all of that traffic to the website, getting crazy results, as a byproduct, their current following count at the point of recording this video is 47.7 thousand followers. And that's purely a byproduct of, running conversion ads. So, when you sign clients on board as well, make sure that you kind of say, you mention that like things are going to increase. Not only is direct sales, direct conversion, ROAS and overall business growth going to increase, but also these other things that, aren't too important, but if you can get it up, that's amazing. And as I say, as a byproduct of generating these crazy results, this stuff can happen. So that was the second thing that I checked out. How many followers did they have? Even back then, I knew that building off of a foundation was a lot more effective than trying to build a foundation. Bringing a product to market is much harder than taking an already winning product, already winning brand, and scaling it. It's much harder to bring that original product to market. So I knew all of that stuff, and they checked off on that Instagram. From here, what I did was I went onto their website. Now, this is where not their website, but the next couple steps that I'm going to mention, this is where I've massively changed up the way that I approach things, and I've massively changed up the way that I, teach it in the program as well, the Quantum Leap Ecomm Agency program. This is where things change up. And I didn't implement this with this first client. And this is where my knowledge now has come in and I really understand this sector of it. So back then with this client that I'm talking about, my very first e-commerce client, I went onto their website, and first things first, as soon as I landed onto the website, I realized very, very aesthetically pleasing website, and that I still make sure that I implement today, because at the end of the day, you can send a crazy amount of traffic, the most targeted traffic to a website, but if that website that you're sending the traffic to just simply doesn't convert, I mean, it's, you just can't get any results. It doesn't matter how much traffic, how targeted it is, you just can't get results. So make sure that every single client you reach out to has a very aesthetically pleasing website, and I knew that this specific client did. Now, the one thing that they didn't have on their website was a Facebook pixel. However, back then, as I mentioned, didn't have the knowledge that I do today. So I still continued the process of qualifying them, right? But now, a brand that doesn't have a Facebook pixel installed already on their website, I don't really reach out to. It's not that I don't bring clients on board that don't have a Facebook pixel. It's just that if I'm spending my time, on my team more so now is spending their time reaching out to brands, then we want to make sure that they've got that Facebook pixel installed, because as I said, it's much easier to build off of a foundation than actually build the foundation. And Facebook pixel, if there's a lot of data on there, there's a big foundation for you to come in and build off of, okay? So that was kind of where I've changed up my qualification process quite heavily since then. Now, from here though, I still said back then, I was like, cool, this is a good brand. And then I went to their Facebook ad library. Okay, so I went to their Facebook page, opened up the page transparency section. And again, this is where I've changed things up. So back then, this brand, given that they didn't have a Facebook pixel installed, majority of the time when brands don't, they're also not running ads. And this brand was no exception to that rule. They didn't have a pixel installed and they weren't running ads. And back then I thought that, okay, this brand's not running ads, so they can use my services. I'm going to be of value to them because they're not running ads, and myself, and at the time it was actually just myself, there was no team. So at the time it was just myself. I was like, I can come in and run the ads for them. And it's a very logical thought. However, since then, this is another aspect that I've altered in my qualification process. I only ever reach out to brands that are running ads. Again, same with the Facebook pixel. If a brand comes to me, they're an inbound lead and they're not running ads, it's not that we don't bring brands on board who don't run ads. It's just that if we're spending our time, if my team's spending their time reaching out to brands, then we want to make sure that they've got the strongest foundation in place possible. And so brands that are running, doesn't need to be a whole heap. If a brand's running 100, 200, 300 ads, then it shows you that they've got a strong foundation in place already. And you kind of just, you're not going to be that much of value to them. Now, again, there's always the exceptions where brands are spending a lot of money and they're not returning anything, so they can actually be of value to you. But for the most part, brands who are running 100 plus ads, they've probably got things in place, so you'll just be wasting your time reaching out to them. But if they're running like 1, 2, maybe 10 ads or whatever it is, they're not using Facebook to its fullest potential, so you can still come in and be of great value to the brand. And this is what myself and my team do now, and it's also what I go through and all the students go through as well in the program. And it's very, very, very powerful, okay? Very, very powerful. And so back to the story. Even though that, if I came across this same brand today, I would have said it's not qualified, I still reached out to the brand. And what I went ahead and did was actually email them. And I still use email outreach because it's still the most powerful. Yes, we're building VSLs for the agency right now. And yes, I've got a very, very strong inbound lead system through Facebook that obviously for those of you in the program, you guys know exactly how to execute. I still execute on that. You guys know I'm a product of my own product. So yes, we're doing all these things. But guys, seriously, cold email, simple organic cold email works tremendously well. And so I'm not going to neglect that. And so we still reach out to the people via email. And it's actually how I got started building my client roster with my Ecomm agency, email. And this client again was no exception. So I reached out to them via email, and it was actually the follow-up email, the second follow-up email that I sent. They opened the first one, and it was actually the follow-up email that they replied to me on. And I remember distinctly, and by the way, back then I didn't have a very strong structure in place in terms of, email 1, 2 business days later, email 2, 2 business days later, email 3. I didn't have that structure in place. I kind of just reached out to brands and just seen what they were going to say. I sent one email to this brand, they didn't answer, so I just thought, oh, I'll just email again, follow up, right? But back then I didn't really know that. And followed up with them. And it was that second follow-up email that they replied to me on. And as I mentioned before, I distinctly remember what his response was. The reply was, hey Kai, my sister is actually away for the remainder of this week. She's on holiday. Would love to book in a call when she's back. That was the response. I remember it distinctly word for word. And so I responded back to that, hey, no worries at all, we'll speak in a week. And obviously what I would do now in that situation, again, I've grown, I've evolved, I understand things a lot more now. So back then what I would have done is actually got a call booked in there and then for the following week, so that it basically doesn't forget about me, doesn't ghost me or anything like that. I would have done it there and then. But what I did back then, being very transparent with you guys, is I just said, hey, no worries at all, we'll speak next week, or I'll email you back next week, whatever I said. A week later, I emailed him back and I shot him over my scheduler at that point. And that's when he actually went ahead and booked in a call. And I was lucky, because for the most part, if you do that, the client will just drop off, the client will forget about you, and they'll just kind of go back to their normal day to day. This potential client actually scheduled in a call the following week. And I remember, actually, it was funny because he never replied to me saying anything. And so I thought, oh, maybe he's just like doing like, yeah, he's booked a call. But I just remember thinking like, no, he's not responded. It's probably not going to, it's probably not going to be anything. He's just booked in a call, whatever. And so from here, at the scheduled time, I showed up to the call. And again, I'm not going to go through the sales process and whatnot. But one thing that I do remember is that I hopped on the call. I was literally sat right here, right? And I hopped on the call. And when I got onto the call on Zoom, I remember, because it was just audio. I only did an audio call because they didn't have their video one. So I was just like, I'm not going to put mine on. And I remember I went into the Zoom meeting room, had my earphones in, and there was just a bunch of laughing. Everybody was talking. There was like, it felt as though there was like 15 people there on the other side. Everyone was laughing and talking, and I was just like, hello. I think my first or second e-commerce meeting that I had, e-commerce brand meeting that I had, because all the others were real estate, as I said. And yeah, very, very nervous, very, very uncomfortable. I could hear myself being nervous. I could hear my voice shaking and whatnot. And as I say to, you guys on the YouTube channel, I say to all of the students of the program, it happens. If there's nothing you can do, like, honestly, there is nothing that you can do to prepare yourself to be confident for that very, very first meeting that you have, no matter what. There's nothing you can do. You're always going to be nervous, and you got to accept it, and you got to understand that just the more times you go through the process, the more times you do it, the more times you get more comfortable in those situations, and then from there your confidence just is a natural byproduct of that. So make sure you remember that for your first couple client meetings, because it happens to everyone. It happened to me. That was my first ever e-commerce meeting, even though I had a bunch more before that for real estate, right? I think I had maybe 2 clients in the real estate niche, something like that. I can't remember exactly, but had a couple clients in the real estate niche. And despite that, I was still nervous for the e-commerce meeting, because I was like, this is different. It was different waters, So that is the story of and obviously, as I'm sure you guessed, I went on to sell them on that meeting. And actually, something else that I do want to mention is that on that meeting, I didn't close them on that call. Now myself and the students of the program, we all shoot for 1 call closes, because you can do it. There's no point having follow-up meetings unless certain things come into play, and I won't discuss that in here, but we always go into the initial meeting with the goal of closing them on that meeting. And back then, I kind of didn't have that. Again, there wasn't too much structure. And so what he said to me at the end of that meeting was, can you send over a proposal? And I was like, yep, no worries. Like, I was more than happy to do that. So I shot him over the proposal. And in that proposal, I said 1,500 per month, Australian as well. So super small retainer. And in that proposal, as I mentioned, I put it at the end, 1,500. And he emailed me back. I can't remember if it was that afternoon or if it was the following day. I can't remember, but it was pretty quick. It was definitely within the 24 hours of me sending over the proposal. And he said, yep, more than happy to move forward. How soon can we get started? And oh my God, when I read that email, I was so excited. I was like screaming. I ran to my parents. I was like, oh my God, you know, because I really wanted to get into the e-commerce niche. It was the niche that I really wanted to go into. And so making the transition was quite hard to set, you know, from real estate, local lead gen to e-commerce. It was quite hard to make that transition. And so once I locked in that first client, it was the best feeling ever. And yeah, I suppose the rest is history. So guys, I hope you enjoyed. I hope it gave you some good context in terms of exactly how I signed on my first client. A bunch of the stuff I still implement today, but a lot of that process I've definitely iterated on. I've changed up, I've optimized, I've made it more efficient and overall more effective. And I hope you guys got some good value out of this video to show you really, you don't need a lot of experience. You don't need to know the ins and outs of all this different stuff to sign your first couple of clients. So I hope this video was valuable. If it was, make sure you go ahead, smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next video.